Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 31. Master of Genjutsu. The orange sun set the sky on fire, but Naruto did not sweat underneath its sweltering heat. Beneath his feet was an endless desert that bent to his will. Kurenai tried to reach him, only to slip and crash, eating dust. A scowl marred her face as she stood on shaky limbs, but when she did, Naruto had widened the gap between them. Now that he controlled the battlefield, it was time to end this fight, once and for all. Naruto slashed the air with the blade in his hand, unleashing a burst of wind that slammed against his opponent. "Is that it?" an unfazed Kurenai asked, voice ringing in his ears as if she was whispering in them. He thought he'd taken care of that already. Taking a deep breath, the ringing voice faded. "I'm just getting started." A clone dived for Kurenai, slicing with its blade, only to crash. Another clone leapt out from within the nearby dune, slashing the same way the last clone did, but it missed too, kicking up a plume of dust. Naruto wasn't too worried. Every time a clone dispersed, another would take its place, swinging its unique blade in an overhead arc. This unyielding pressure combined with the shifting sands made it difficult for Kurenai to counter the onslaught of Naruto's clones. It was only a matter of time before she messed up. The second she did, Naruto himself would strike. "Not bad, Naruto, not bad, but I've figured you out," Kurenai said. She twisted her shoulders and avoided one clone, crouching to the side to avoid another, and surging forth to avoid a third clone. A kunai flickered into her hand. "Your clones have no chance of." Kurenai stumbled, lurching forward as her arms waved like windmills. She steadied herself, but she was powerless to stop Naruto from slicing through her stomach. Blood spilled out of her innards, drenching the sand bright crimson. "Hey, you got me," Kurenai said, blood gushing out of her mouth. Her eyes suddenly began to glow. "Or did you?" Kurenai burst into an uncountable number of vines, ensnaring Naruto tighter than any noose. Before he could even react, they shot straight for the scorching sun. His ears popped, and it felt like his entire body, from the blood pumping in his veins to all of his organs, was rushing to meet the sky. Then suddenly, he stopped moving. Instead of being crushed by suffocating air pressure, Naruto hung hundreds of meters above the desert, ribcage rattling. He took in a deep breath, and at that moment, the vines twisted, binding his limbs against a thick tree. The sharp steel of a kunai grazed his throat as Kurenai pressed against his back. "Do you yield, Naruto?" Naruto twisted his head so he could hear her. The kunai didn't draw blood, but one bad move and Kurenai would slice his throat. She wasn't smiling at all, her expression was a mask of firm determination. Flawless, except that she was squinting. Kurenai never squinted. "Never," Naruto said, bearing a toothy grin. His eyes became bright red as his skin burned like the orange sun, setting the tree ablaze. The vines that kept him bound fused with his body and mutated into orange tails, first sprouting where the flames melted his skin. The sheer force of this transformation was enough to break the hold Naruto's illusion held on reality. The bright blue of a sunny day pierced through the cracks in the sunset sky, while fresh green grass sprouted from beneath the sands of the endless desert. Kurenai stood in the middle of their training spot, the hidden waterfall where they first met. Her ruby-red eyes bulged out of their sockets, and her breaths were heavy and hard. Even if this was just an act, she'd still take a moment to recover. She got to experience her skin melting off her bones as she came within touching distance of the nine-tailed fox in all its demonic fury. He dropped Kurenai to her knees, bound her arms behind her back, and pressed the tip of his kunai against her jugular vein. "Got you," Naruto said. The corners of his mouth twitched from anticipation. His teacher's chakra pulsed, once. Then she stopped struggling. "Congratulations." Naruto pulled away his kunai and helped Kurenai up. He had the biggest grin on his face, and Kurenai was smiling, too. For the past month, he spent most of his time refining his existing illusions, working on new ones and expanding his general knowledge on the art of genjutsu. In the past, he would be lucky if he kept Kurenai entranced for even a single second, but now, it would take her that long to dispel his weakest illusion, giving him ample time to land a killing blow. "You should be proud of what you accomplished," Kurenai said, capturing Naruto's attention. "Now that you've defeated me, You are officially my equal in the field of genjutsu. Your equal? He asked. Kurenai had been a genjutsu master for over a decade. How could he be her equal if he'd only been practicing genjutsu for 5 months? When you defeat a recognized genjutsu master with genjutsu only, you are considered a master of genjutsu and therefore, their equal. Naruto's brow furrowed. Just like that, you can be evaluated by another master of genjutsu with 2 other shinobi proficient in genjutsu acting as witnesses. While it's a legitimate method in its own right, I believe that would only serve to validate your victory against me. He scratched his head. I thought that's what I'd have to do. Mastering genjutsu is different from mastering ninjutsu or taijutsu, she said, always patient. A fireball might burn anyone it touches, but an illusion won't affect everyone the same way, due to their chakra control, mental state or something else entirely. A genjutsu master must know that, and improvise. Of course, the more skilled a person is at genjutsu, the harder it becomes for them to get caught. Therefore, the best way to test a student's mastery of genjutsu is for them to trap their master in an unbreakable illusion. Because I know how you fight, it's easier for me to know how to free myself from your illusions. So I have to work harder to beat you, right? She smiled. Exactly. Naruto sighed. You really think I'm ready? This title holds a lot of weight, Naruto, and you've shown all the traits of a worthy genjutsu master: creativity, adaptability, composure, cunning, and lateral thinking. You're ready. It was funny, in that weird way. He was this close to becoming a master of genjutsu, but it didn't feel like he was even close to being ready. And yet, there was something in Kurenai's tone that made him reconsider. While she did praise him when he did a good job, she was never so candid about his skill. In her eyes, there was always room for improvement. While that was still true, he did beat her in an actual battle. She didn't make it easy for him, but nothing and nobody could take his victory away from him. If that's the case, Naruto smiled. Let's make it official. Of course. She stood in a rigid stance, spine straight, hands at her side. Naruto Uzumaki, Chunin of the village hidden in the leaves. By the terms agreed upon by the hidden villages, I hereby declare you to be a master of genjutsu. It wasn't how he expected it to go, but that didn't stop him grinning from ear to ear. All of the hard work in improving his chakra control and the struggle to learn genjutsu in the first place, through all the doubt and difficulty, had been validated. He finally achieved his dream. Thank you, Kurenai-sensei, he said. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have mastered genjutsu so quickly. I won't ever forget what you've taught me. Kurenai beamed. It made her eyes shine. Thank you, Naruto. You've taken to this art in ways I never imagined, and I've truly enjoyed teaching you and watching you grow. I couldn't be more proud of you. Naruto took a moment to soak in all of his teacher's praise before he gave her a huge hug. He enjoyed holding her in his arms, feeling her body pressed against his. He felt content with his place in life and his accomplishment. That feeling grew when Kurenai wrapped her arms against him, and in that moment, it felt like they were the only 2 people who existed. Eventually, they had to part, but when they did, Naruto and Kurenai smiled at each other. Let's go pay the Hokage a visit, Kurenai said. Your file needs to be updated. Sure. Together, they left the waterfall, holding hands. When they reached the edge of the forest, Naruto looked up at Kurenai. Do you want to go on a dinner date with me tonight? Kurenai glanced at him, smiling. I'd like that. As soon as they stepped into the village, Kurenai let go of his hand and took 1 step away from him. He shook his head in response. She still wanted to keep their true relationship a secret. Jiraiya was the only one who knew, but it didn't have to be that way. Quite frankly, he was surprised that no one else had caught on, not Kakashi or Tsunade or even the 3rd. Would you mind coming with me to Ichiraku Ramen, then? He'd grown a lot more comfortable in asking Kurenai to go on dates with him, but this was still a big request. Why, so you can show me off like I'm some kind of prize? Naruto froze, and stared at Kurenai. For a second, he saw the scowl etched on Kurenai's face, but it had smoothed out into a stoic mask. I'd never do that. Kurenai frowned, eyes downcast. You're right, you wouldn't. I'm sorry for saying that. Don't worry about it, Naruto said, not wanting to dwell on any negativity. I just wanted to introduce you to Ayame and Tyuki. They've been really good to me since forever, and it'd be great if you could meet them. A small smile curved her lips. I would like to meet them, but I'm still not comfortable being introduced as your girlfriend. Kurenai gnawed on her lip, something she usually did when she was nervous or worried about hurting him. I'd like it if we waited another year before going public, if you don't mind. This wasn't the first time they were having this conversation, and it did upset him, but he tried to see it from her perspective. It wasn't being seen with the Jinchuriki that worried her, it was how the few friends she had would react to the obvious age difference between them. He vividly remembered Anko's cradle robber remark, and the fear that Kurenai would be treated differently, or be rejected outright, was the last thing he wanted for her. Okay, Kurenai, Naruto said, but even he could hear the resignation in his voice. I'd rather be with you in secret than not be with you at all. And besides, you don't have to hide anything from me. You can tell me anything, you know. Kurenai smiled at him before quickly checking the area. Nobody was around. He'd checked with his sensor. She stepped in front of him and bent forward, pressing her lips against his forehead. When she pulled away, his face burned from the warmth in his cheeks. He was so caught up in that sensation that he only caught a small part of what Kurenai said. Thank you. Naruto gave her a thumbs up. No problem. Now that I think about it, there's one good thing about us being a secret. What is it? No matter who tries to flirt with you, they can't be with you because you chose me. And they won't know why. Kurenai chuckled, holding her hand in front her mouth to stifle her laughter. Her beautiful eyes held a deep affection, and it was all for him. Trust me, Naruto, there's no one else I'd rather be with than you. For some reason, Tsunade was sitting behind the Hokage's desk, reading from a folder. Tsunade? Naruto asked. Tsunade smirked. That's my name. Who were you expecting? The Candy Man. Well, you were pretty sweet, Jiraiya said. He was standing right behind his old teammate. Naruto resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Good thing he didn't take the pervy sage's advice on pickup lines. With lines like those, maybe you should hold off on that new book of yours, Tsunade said, shaking her head. What happened to Lord Third? Naruto asked. He should be enjoying his retirement right about now, Tsunade said. I'll be inducted as the 5th Hokage tomorrow. Naruto's eyes flew wide. He hadn't forgotten Tsunade's bitterness and disdain for the other Hokage, and while he'd never found out the reason why, the fact that Tsunade was actually going to succeed the old Hokage was a huge surprise. A surprise that Kurenai and Jiraiya didn't seem to share. Then again, they probably knew already. Why? Tsunade chuckled. There's a lot of room for improvement, and I figured, why not help out? It's time I take responsibility and give back. My days of running are over. As much as he wanted to know what she meant by that last part, it was Tsunade's right to tell him the full truth when, or if, she wanted to do so. What was important right now was results, and Tsunade had already overhauled the hospital. He'd heard about how Shizune was running a tight ship there and making the nurses and interns complain about the long hours. Well, congratulations, Naruto said, willing a smile to appear. Kick some ass. The new Hokage smiled in return. Thank you, and I will. Now that I'm going to be Hokage, I expect you to show me some respect. Naruto nodded. He couldn't imagine disrespecting Tsunade now that she was going to be Hokage, unless she gave him a reason. Kurenai placed a hand on his shoulder. Lady Tsunade, I want you to officially certify Naruto as a master of Genjutsu. I tested him today and he passed with flying colors. Tsunade's eyes widened slightly, but she smiled. I'll update his file as soon as I can. I'll need a full report of Naruto's progress from you. As you command. Jiraiya smiled at him, one filled with pride. You've already done it, huh? Can't say I'm surprised. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. I'd be surprised if I hadn't seen him master the Rasengan. It feels like it's only a matter of time before Naruto's the one sitting behind this desk. If anything, Tsunade not trying to mess with him was the real surprise. She'd always been so hard on him, like it was her sole purpose in life to make him mad. Still, he'd take it. I do my best, Naruto said, blushing due to all the praise. Anyway, now that you're here, Jiraiya has something he wants to tell you, Tsunade said. Jiraiya stared at him with hard eyes. The happy mood in the room had instantly evaporated. We're going on a training trip. The grip on Naruto's shoulder tightened. What will you be training him in? Kurenai asked. Ninjutsu, some sealing, and improving his relationship with the toads, Jiraiya said. And when the toads and I think he's ready, I'll start teaching him how to harness natural energy. I'll also spend some time on getting his taijutsu up to snuff. All of this sounded incredibly appealing to Naruto. Now that he was a genjutsu master, and just being able to say that nearly made him grin on the spot, he could really focus on mastering his chakra nature and working on his taijutsu, which was unfortunately his weak link. Kurenai had helped him, but while she was good at it, Jiraiya was on a different level. And this requires Naruto to leave with you. He can stay here, with us. Jiraiya frowned. Naruto, how many times have you seen me since you returned to the village? 0. Naruto said. Exactly. I have a spy network to run. If I stopped my work to come back and train you, you'd only get a fraction of the skills you need. We'd both lose out. Naruto looked up at Kurenai and saw the frown creasing her mouth. How long will this training trip last? Jiraiya glanced at Tsunade, who gave him a short nod. About 3 years, maybe less. It all depends on how quickly Naruto finishes his training. 3 years away from the village, away from Kurenai. He really didn't want to leave her, now that he was finally getting to know her inside and out. He didn't want to leave his other friends either. He was finally starting to enjoy living in this village. Naruto looked up to see Kurenai's lips pursed, like she was genuinely contemplating the idea instead of rejecting the proposal outright. A training trip of that length was pretty unusual. He didn't really need all that time, did he? There's another reason why you want Naruto away from the village, Kurenai said. Tsunade set her hands on her desk. There is. An organization calling themselves the Akatsuki are hunting down the tailed beasts. We don't know what they intend to do with them, but they're incredibly dangerous, and as long as you're here, you're in danger. Naruto gulped. How dangerous could they be? All of them are S-rank ninja, Jiraiya said, and you've experienced firsthand what someone of that caliber is capable of. Saying that didn't sound good was an understatement. A group of ninja that were as strong, or stronger than Orochimaru or Materumi was enough to make his skin crawl, and the only reason they were gunning for him was because of the monster stuck in his stomach. Well, now I've got another reason to get stronger, right? He said, feigning bravado. It's one hell of an incentive, Tsunade said. You need to get to that level by the time they start to mobilize, and unfortunately, Jiraiya is the only feasible option you have. I could train you, but not only will I be very busy, the only thing I could really help you with is taijutsu. Elemental ninjutsu isn't my speciality, and I don't imagine you'd want to be a medic. Naruto shrugged. It could be useful. Learning to heal people will never be useless, but I have very strict rules I expect my students to follow. If the medic dies on the field because he or she wanted to fight the enemy, then the entire squad is put in jeopardy. Are you willing to put your team ahead of your own desires and ensure their safety, even if it means you might be the last one standing? By the end, her brown eyes burned with an unyielding fervor. It shouldn't have been surprising, considering who she was, but it served as another reminder that Tsunade wasn't just a drunk gambler who thrived on spite. It's not something I'd expect you to answer, Tsunade said, catching his attention. Her gaze had softened. Sarutobi-sensei could teach you everything you need to know, but he deserves to enjoy his retirement and spend time with his family. Kakashi could improve your ninjutsu and taijutsu, but he's better suited to taking on high-ranking missions. And I doubt you'd appreciate his tutelage, considering how your relationship with Kurenai began in the first place. And how did you learn about that? Kurenai asked, coldly. Her red eyes held an emotion he couldn't quite place. Tsunade turned her stare to Kurenai and smiled, like a shark. I do my research. Naruto watched this staring contest happen, and to his teacher's credit, she was holding her own against one of the Sannin. It was getting pretty awkward, though, but when he looked at Jiraiya, he was eating it all up. Maybe he was the only one who noticed how the air in the room had become suffocating. Well, Tsunade said, looking at him. Kurenai let out a breath next to him. You've heard my case. He may not look or act like it, but there isn't anyone better suited to training you than Jiraiya. Jiraiya cackled. Finally, some respect. Don't get used to it. Tsunade had made some good points, though he wasn't quite willing to sell Kakashi short. even after everything that had happened between them. He'd always been kind to him, and he did know his stuff. That said, he doubted Kakashi would be willing to put everything aside just to help him. He wasn't his sensei. Kurenai was, and Jiraiya was his master. I need some time to think about it, Naruto said. Jiraiya smiled at him. Of course, I'll be around the village for the next couple weeks, so take the time to really think about you want. Don't take too long, though, because when I leave, I'm going, with or without you. I'd like nothing more than for you to stay here, Tsunade said, but if you do stay, you're putting yourself and the village as a whole at risk. Not counting myself, Jiraiya and Sarutobi-sensei, there's only 3 people I'd consider capable of fighting an S rank without any assistance, and I can't afford to put Kakashi or Guy on standby when they can make a greater impact elsewhere. I don't think you'd like being cooped up here either, now that you've had a taste of the outside world. Tsunade stared right through him. But no matter what you choose to do, I will find a way to protect you. Naruto smiled. Thank you. Today was definitely full of surprises. His certification as a master of Genjutsu already felt distant in the wake of this bombshell, but achieving his dream wasn't the end, it was only the beginning of the next part of his journey. And it would stay with him forever. After making plans to meet up at her apartment in the evening, Naruto parted ways with his girlfriend and sensei, the weight of his choice heavy on his mind and his heart. Since it was lunchtime, he decided to visit Ichiraku Ramen. The taste of hot noodles and some warm broth in his belly would help him settle down. When he reached the humble stand, he saw Shikamaru finishing up a bowl of ramen. Seeing Shikamaru at Ichiraku Ramen wasn't a surprise. Naruto had introduced him to Ayame earlier in the month and they hit it off. Since then, he'd become a regular at the ramen stand. According to him, Ayame wasn't a drag like the other women in his life and the stand was nice and quiet. Hey, Ayame, Naruto shouted, as he always did. Get me a chicken ramen and keep 'em coming. Ayame smiled and got to work, while Shikamaru turned to face him. How it's going, Naruto? He said. Naruto took a seat next to his friend and smiled. I'm doing great. How are things with you? Shikamaru returned his smile. Just got back from a mission yesterday. I'm looking forward to getting some shut-eye. I hear ya, Naruto said. Learn any new jutsu? Nah, been working on my shadow possession, mostly. Asuma wants me to get started on learning some ninjutsu so I have more options in the field. The mention of Asuma made him stir for a bit. Asuma had been pretty nice the few times they spoke, but it was his long friendship with Kurenai that worried him. Although, there was no need to fear. Kurenai had convinced him that she didn't have any feelings for Asuma, so he'd give them the benefit of the doubt. Your chakra nature's earth, right? Naruto asked. Right, that sensing ability of yours really is useful. It's awesome, and learning more ninjutsu's a great idea. You'd get more ways to use your shadows. A slight smile appeared on his face. I was thinking I'd box my enemy in with some walls, or dig some holes to make him think twice. If I could use wind ninjutsu, I'd probably try rigging up some balloons. Before you do any of that, you have to learn how to use your chakra nature, right? Shikamaru groaned. Ugh, don't remind me. Why does shifting earth have to be such a drag? Naruto didn't have an answer to that. He was still working on splitting a waterfall. He had tried using some wind ninjutsu of his own and saw a drastic improvement in its power and speed. The shortcut Jiraiya had taught him was still usable in a pinch, but it just didn't compare to the real thing. Here you go, Naruto, Ayame said, setting his bowl on the table. Steam billowed towards the ceiling and his mouth watered in anticipation from the smell of the broth and the chicken melding with the noodles. Thanks, Ayame, he said. Before he could dig in, he looked around and didn't see anyone else. Where's your dad? He's out buying supplies, she replied. Tell him I say hi when he comes back. Naruto slurped up some of the noodles. As soon as he swallowed them all, he opened his mouth and sighed in satisfaction. Delicious. Naruto continued to eat his ramen, enjoying the combination of flavors and the atmosphere of his favorite restaurant. Ayame had his second bowl waiting for him. You're in a good mood, Shikamaru said. His bowl was empty. Naruto was already halfway through his new bowl, he grinned. I did it, Shikamaru. Shikamaru looked at him in confusion. Naruto could almost see the gears in his mind shifting behind his black eyes. You mastered Genjutsu. He clapped him on the shoulder. Congratulations. I wouldn't have started if it wasn't for you, he said. My chakra control sucked and I was never good at Genjutsu, but you really believed I could do it. It was that level of trust and support that he appreciated most about Shikamaru. He thought Shikamaru just kept him around to have another guy to play shogi with, but he'd proven time and again that he had his back. No matter how long they were apart, they could talk to each other like they never left. It was a very relaxed kind of friendship, but it was a relationship he'd always wanted, and sometimes, he could barely believe how lucky he was to have it. Shikamaru frowned, like he was mulling over something. I figured that getting you to think about Genjutsu would help you stand out. I knew you were creative, but you somehow managed to master Genjutsu, and learn an A-rank jutsu along the way. Honestly, I wasn't sure if you could hack it. Naruto was about to cut him off, but Shikamaru held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. Here's the thing. Saying you'd be the Hokage or the greatest Genjutsu master ever is one thing, but actually putting in the work is something else entirely. He smiled. Riley, I should know, but you actually read those books I got you, and you managed to get into the bingo book because of your Genjutsu ability. That's what made me think, hey, maybe he could actually do it. Shikamaru smiled at him, and Naruto felt pride swell in his heart. And here you are, Naruto Uzumaki, master of Genjutsu. Naruto nodded, swallowing thickly. He'd been caught up in the joy of mastering Genjutsu when it happened, but being able to share this with the guy who set him on this path in the first place truly made him appreciate the magnitude of his achievement. It reminded him of how far he'd come, and he mustered a smile before he started to cry. Thank you, he said. Thank you, Shikamaru, any time. Shikamaru squeezed his shoulder again before letting go. Naruto decided to finish off his second bowl of ramen before it got cold. It still tasted as good as ever. When he finished, Ayame was smiling at him. You've grown, Naruto, she said, collecting his bowl. Naruto blinked. In what way? Ayame set his third bowl in front of him. For one, you don't talk with your mouth full. He flinched, recalling a memory of when he was eating dinner at Shikamaru's house. Yoshino had caught him talking through a mouthful of rice and gave him such a tongue lashing that doing it again never even crossed his mind. In fact, he'd made time to visit Yoshino and Shikaku whenever he wasn't busy. After being dragged to his own promotion party, he knew for a fact that he wasn't some stranger who was tolerated out of pity. He belonged there. You're still the same Naruto, but you're more thoughtful, Ayame continued. You've made your setbacks your advantages, and you went through some hard times without forgetting who you are. She's right, Shikamaru said. It was true that he grew and even changed in some ways, but hearing it from Ayame was validating in its own way. Just because he'd found another way to rise above hate through his new friends, it didn't mean he had to let go of the brash, hyperactive knucklehead he'd once been just to get the people's respect. There were people who'd accept him just the way he was, and knowing that he could come back to them put his heart and mind at ease. In what felt like no time at all, Naruto was in front of Kurenai's apartment, lightly knocking on the door. No one in the building even knew he was there, and he didn't have to wait long before it opened. Kurenai's curvaceous body was contained in a revealing red dress. She wore the bracelet he bought for her on her right wrist, and he could smell her floral perfume that somehow managed to mix rose and lavender without clashing. Good evening, Kurenai, Naruto said, smiling at her. He knew that she knew he was checking her out, but he wasn't ashamed. You look amazing. He enjoyed her light, lilting giggle. Her eyes roved over his outfit. He still didn't have any formal clothing, so he chose to wear his trusted black and orange kimono. It hadn't failed to make him look good yet. Thank you, Naruto. You look rather dashing yourself. She moved to the side, granting him room to enter. Please, come in. Pardon me, he said, stepping inside. After removing his sandals, he followed his companion to her living room. He waited for her to take her seat, but Kurenai was still standing. Dinner will be ready in a few minutes, Kurenai said, looking over her shoulder. You can take a seat in the meantime. Naruto took his seat on the couch, watching his girlfriend disappear into the kitchen. Just the thought of Kurenai being his girlfriend still made a thrill run through his body. They'd been in a relationship for over 3 months, and the excitement he'd felt and the sensations she stimulated had only gotten stronger. His desire for her touch, her scent, or even just a little peek of her hadn't waned one bit. He still felt his heart catch in his chest when she smiled at him. His breath hitched when she caught his gaze from across a room. His stomach did back flips to the tune of her laughter. His knees grew weak when she saw that smoldering look in her eyes. His tongue wetted his lips whenever she leaned in for a toe-curling kiss. His eyes glazed when she touched him and his mind fogged up when she kissed him. Naruto knew, without a doubt, that he was hooked, and even if he wanted to, he couldn't do a thing to escape. His body responded to her unlike anyone he had ever met or even fantasized about. Kurenai came out of the kitchen holding 2 plates filled with food. Naruto's eyebrows rose when he saw what was on the plates. Beef skewers, Naruto asked, and steamed rice, as well. Kurenai smiled, sitting next to him. Would you like to know what we're having for dessert? Let me guess, cake. Kurenai smirked. You'll just have to wait and see. The reason Kurenai wanted to recreate the food they had on their first date was beyond him, but she knew how to cook. Her food tasted better than his. They ate their dinner in a comfortable silence, enjoying each other's company. Naruto would watch Kurenai eat every now and then, and he saw Kurenai stealing glances at him when she thought he wasn't looking. After the hearty meal, Kurenai cleaned up their plates and came back with dessert. To no one's surprise, it was a large slice of cake on a saucer. A pair of forks were in her other hand. I knew it, Naruto said, smiling at his girlfriend. Kurenai only winked in response. But I thought you didn't like cake. It's not to my taste, but eating it won't kill me. Kurenai sat down next to him, setting the saucer and forks in front of them. Taking one of the forks, she cut a piece of cake and brought it to his mouth. Naruto opened wide and ate the piece with relish. It's really good, thanks, Kurenai. Kurenai held his gaze for a couple of seconds before smiling. You're welcome, Naruto. Have you thought about the training trip? Yeah, I think it'd be great for me, I just wish I didn't have to be 3 whole years. It is a long time, Kurenai said, toying with her fork. But if you do decide to leave, we can pick up where we left off. I want you to stay here, with me, but I don't want to hold you back, either. He sighed in relief. Knowing that Kurenai would be okay if he left made one part of his decision easier. That means a lot to me, Naruto said, a rosy flush illuminating his face. He took his own fork and offered a piece to his girlfriend, who ate the cake from his fork with demure bites. When she finished, she sucked the fork and let go. They continued to feed each other cake, smiling widely at each other. It was finished sooner than he'd like, and he saw Kurenai move to pick up the cutlery. He placed a hand on her exposed knee and smiled, before making a clone to the dishes. The clone scowled at him, but did the job anyway. Kurenai's eyes lingered on the clone, which was all the distraction he needed. As soon as blue eyes met red, Naruto kissed her ruby red lips before rushing back. He grinned. I got you, Naruto said, laughing from the rush of adrenaline. Kurenai put her finger on her lips, feeling them for a bit. Not for long. Their lips made contact once again. Kurenai kissed him fervently, but he didn't give her an inch. It was a game they'd played over the past month, as their dates usually ended in a hot and heavy makeout session. The first one to land a kiss after they finished eating got a point, and the first one to lose their breath won it all. Naruto's hand crawled up her leg, settling on her silky smooth thigh. It was firm, warm. Minutes passed as they nipped at each other's lips, seeing whose mouth would open first. Kurenai pulled away first. Her lips were full and puffy, but she wasn't breathless, so nobody won the game yet. Let's take this to the love seat, Kurenai said, her voice low, seductive. Naruto stared deep into Kurenai's eyes. In one swift movement, he swept her up in his arms. As you wish, my queen. Kurenai blew the stray lock of black hair from her face. She looked all over his face before she kissed him on his whiskers, leaving him cross-eyed. He managed to walk the short distance over to the love seat before he sat up, leaving him and his girlfriend tangled up. They'd spent a lot of time in kissing bliss on the couch, but they never made out on the love seat. But he quickly found out why Kurenai wanted him there. It was incredibly soft and just big enough for the two of them. She sat on his lap and leaned on him, her generous chest pressing against his pecs as her lips reclaimed his. He gasped from her forwardness, and she slipped her tongue past the gap. Her wandering hands found the sensitive spot on his back and he let out a loud moan, back arching from the pleasure. Their tongues met in a dance and his hands crawled up her body, finding her back and touching the skin her dress exposed. He loved her pretty red dress. It left her back free to explore, and he didn't have to struggle around bra straps or clothing. She arched against him, letting his hands sink in and knead the muscle like putty. Electric shocks pulsed against his hands, his mouth, and his chest as their bodies melded together. Her wonderful breasts strained against him and, not for the first time, he wanted to hold them in his hands, to caress them and make her writhe against him. But he had to control himself, because he didn't know if Kurenai was willing to go any further. Instead, he let one of his hands trail down her back, stopping just above her tailbone, lingering there for a bit before tracing up her side. Kurenai threw her head back, releasing a throaty moan that made his arousal swell. He latched onto her neck, sucking the expanse of skin she'd revealed. She purred like a cat, exciting him even further. His lips ghosted over her pale skin and just as he hoped, she groaned from sheer pleasure. He was stiff down below, and a shot of fear lanced through his heart, as she was really close to touching him there. Right now, worrying about his imagination was the last thing he needed, so he kissed her directly underneath her earlobe. His hands moved in concert, rubbing the sensitive spots he'd managed to find and making her writhe against him, like she was an instrument he'd learned to play. Reeling from the sheer confidence of having such a beautiful woman enjoying his touch, Naruto moved to suck on her exposed shoulder, latching onto the skin. He let it go with a pop and saw a tiny bruise begin to spread. That was his mark. If anyone thought they could claim Kurenai, they'd be in for a world of disappointment. She was his. And as fleeting as it was, the memory would remain. He was awesome. With his right hand, Naruto slid over the silk of her dress, grabbing her waist. With his left, he threaded his fingers through her luxuriously soft hair and pulled her neck back to kiss it once more. Another throaty moan was his answer, his reward. He caught her lips and ravished her as his right hand moved up her toned stomach and reached her bust. He let out a deep breath and reached for her breast, gently cupping it in his hand. Finally, Naruto lingered there for a moment, seeing what she'd do, but she hadn't moved. She was waiting for him. So he'd oblige, and he squeezed her breast through the material. She moaned against him and his blood turned into a raging inferno. Her breath came out ragged as her tongue met his. He caressed her breast, marveling in its weight and feel. If only her dress wasn't in the way. Kurenai moaned again and he took the chance to check out her glazed red eyes. They were traveling around the ceiling, slowly but surely gaining focus. He didn't want that, he wanted her focused on the pleasure he was giving her. He felt her breast tightening against him, so he pressed against it, digging in. She started to shiver against his hold, almost shaking as she squealed. Then her red eyes widened, she pulled away from their kiss and she grabbed his wrist with such force that it felt like she was going to crush it. "Stop," she yelled, pushing herself off him, taking several steps back as the love seat rocked against the wall. Naruto clambered to his feet, instantly concerned. Her chest was heaving from shortness of breath. Her dress was bunched up and her hair was messy and frayed, several stray hairs sticking out. Her lips were oozing out blood in slow rivulets, but her cheeks were flushed in a bright crimson that was more lively and vibrant than he'd ever seen on her face. It was delectable. None of that compared to the stricken, bulging look in her blood-red eyes. Seeing Kurenai's eyes saturated with it, there was no confusing it for something else, and that realization broke his heart. He'd seen it so many times that he'd lost count, and he never, ever imagined he'd see Kurenai look at him that way. She was afraid of him. It stopped him dead in his tracks, paralyzing his mind. It couldn't be. He reached out to her, wanting nothing more than to touch her again, to wipe that look away forever. Kurenai. She flinched, and he felt his hope, his soul rip itself from his chest. His eyes began to water as she continued to look at him with those eyes, those damn frightened eyes. She held her arm in front of her breasts, using her other hand to smooth out her dress. I think you should go," she said. Naruto's heart couldn't bear such a remark. There was no way his Kurenai would ever tell him to leave her. "Please." Her hands shook and she slowly let them fall to her sides, but when he reached for her, she turned her back to him. "Leave, Naruto, please." It definitely wasn't the strong, self-assured voice he was used to, or the seductive timbre he'd always enjoyed. It was fractured, quiet, a shadow of what it should have been. There was no other choice, he had to leave. He went to the doorway to grab his sandals, and looked at her eyes, trying to make her feel just how sorry he was, but her red eyes were inscrutable and she looked away, holding her shoulder with the hand that held his bracelet. Naruto fled. He ran as far away from his girlfriend as he could. If she reacted, if she cried, he'd never know. He nearly tripped trying to put on his sandals, but he managed to do it and leapt from rooftop to rooftop, his fleeing form a blur. He tried to see through the dark, through his tears, but he stumbled and fell into an alley, staining his face with dirt and blood and tearing his spotless kimono. Naruto stood up again and continued to run. The night accepted his pain, his loss, his suffering, and his agony. The trail of tears he left was lost to memory, and his form was swallowed by the blackness of the night. Chapter 32, Plain Sight. With a violent swing, Naruto severed the waterfall into two jagged parts with wind chakra. They still weren't smooth enough. He still couldn't cut it all the way through. It had been a whole week since the end of his disastrous date with Kurenai. A sharp pain stabbed his heart just by thinking about her. He hadn't tried to contact her, but she hadn't done so either, and he had no idea where they stood. He'd isolated himself in his special spot, only heading back into the village to eat or sleep. He didn't feel like talking to anyone, and threw himself into his training. He might have been a genjutsu master now, but time waited for no one, and he planned on becoming a ninjutsu master next. The only time he'd been pulled out of his little bubble was when Shikamaru had found him a few days ago. He'd told him about the waterfall once, and it had paid off as Shikamaru convinced him to eat dinner at his home. Seeing the birthday cake Yoshino had prepared for him made him smile for the first time since leaving Kurenai's apartment. He never felt the need to celebrate his birthday, but the fact that Shikamaru and his family had found him and reminded him of what he had was nearly enough to cut through the gloom. The gloom didn't go away. They'd picked up on his mood, but mercifully, he was never forced to speak. When he went home that day, he saw a card from Iruka wishing him a happy birthday. They used to go out for ramen on his birthday, and that had been enough. He kept up the tradition on his own, this time. He also got birthday messages and cards from Sakura, Choji, Tenten, Hinata, Lee, Anko, Yugao, Kotetsu and Izumo, Takeshi, and a combined one from Shizune and Tsunade. Even Asuma had given him some birthday wishes while he was in between missions, and Jiraiya had given him a first edition copy of Ika Ika Paradise via Toad. It made him feel wanted and appreciated, but he wondered why he was still in the village at all. Sure, 3 years was a really long time, but that wasn't the whole reason why he stuck around. A tiny part of him still thought he could make things right with Kurenai. One mistake didn't take away 5 months of kindness and trust. That part had nearly been snuffed out by the fear and heartbreak and despair that consumed him. He sighed and turned around. Shizune was standing on the water, clad in her ninja uniform. "Naruto, the Hokage requests your presence," Shizune said, and Naruto realized that Shizune wasn't just Tsunade's attendant, she was her apprentice and a skilled ninja in her own right. And like any skilled ninja, she could set any sentiment aside for the mission. "How did you find me?" Naruto asked. "Shikamaru told us where you'd be," Shizune said. Her sleeves covered her hands completely. "So that's how it was. Let's go, then." Shizune smiled at him, and it helped a little bit. Then she whisked him away to the Hokage's office. Tsunade examined him once they entered, hands steepled in front of her mouth. "I'll cut straight to the point," Tsunade said. "Sasuke Uchiha has left the village. He was seen with ninja from the Hidden Sound village before his departure." Naruto blinked, the news shaking him from his stupor. "Why? His motives aren't important," Tsunade said. "I sent a squad already to eliminate the Sound Ninja. Your mission is to support them with Shizune's assistance, and if necessary, rescue them. I've sent what ninja I could up ahead, but more reinforcements will only arrive in 2 to 3 hours. And Sasuke." Tsunade's brown eyes were hard. "Your priority is to your comrades. If you reach him and he chooses to fight, then you know what to do. Have I made myself clear?" Naruto nodded, standing at attention. Yes, Lady Hokage. He had his mission, and it gave him focus, a welcome distraction from his inner turmoil. With Shizune following close by, Naruto immediately left the village with all the speed he possessed. It didn't take him long to find Choji's emaciated body. Shizune was able to stabilize him before his chakra faded away, and Naruto felt a surge of fierce pride for his friend after seeing the crater that lay beneath his opponent's corpse. Naruto formed a dozen clones to escort Choji back to the village, while Shizune formed a shadow clone of her own. "You can make them, too?" Naruto asked. Shizune gave him a small smile. "That's right, I can't make as many as you can, though." She could keep up with him without any difficulty, so the fact that she could feasibly use the shadow clone jutsu was just more evidence of her ability. A slight smile crossed his face. Cool. What wasn't cool, however, was seeing Hinata and Shino's opponent still shooting massive arrows at them. Naruto had blasted a large gust of wind to block one of them, but it had barely knocked the arrow off its path. It was a big enough distraction for him to grab Hinata's bleeding body and pull her away. Shino's Kikaichu were biting through the webs that saturated the battlefield, but their master was barely clinging to consciousness, clutching his eviscerated shoulder. Naruto found the sound ninja and quickly distracted him with a disorienting genjutsu, giving Shizune enough time to close the gap and breath out a cloud of lethal poison that covered the ninja entirely. He fell from the treetops, barely recognizable as human before the black marks faded and his third eye closed. Hinata grabbed his wrist with a hand caked in blood. "Naruto, thank you." Naruto gave her a tight smile, and wordlessly formed more clones to bring his fellow ninja back to the village, after Shizune's clones managed to fend off the worst damage. They moved on, and found Kiba and Akamaru in a ravine, injured but not on death's door. Kankuro from the hidden sand was with them, standing over the remains of what must have been their opponent. Shizune offered to heal them, but Kiba waved her off. He didn't need it or an escort back to the village, but Akamaru needed help. Then Shizune glared at him and Kiba got his stomach wound mended. After climbing out of the ravine, Naruto found Shikamaru next, and other than a broken finger, his closest friend was unharmed. Temari was overlooking a swath of chopped trees, holding on to her fan. Naruto saw the sound ninja, or what was left of her, covered by fallen logs. Her body was broken in so many places that he doubted even Tsunade could heal her. "Get to Lee, Naruto," Shikamaru said, grimacing. "He needs your help. I'll be fine." After brushing off Temari's curious stare, Naruto found Lee in the midst of combat in a large, open field. Lee was moving so fast that Naruto could just barely follow, and his opponent was taking hits that could break boulders without even flinching. Lee came in for an earth-shattering punch, but the sound ninja caught him with his drill. The two forces collided, but Lee destroyed the drill, mangling his hand in the process. The sound ninja remade the drill, and was immediately swamped by a tidal wave of sand. Gaara had arrived, hovering above on a sand platform. In between Lee's oppressive offense and Gaara's suffocating sand, they had managed to defeat the sound ninja that just wouldn't die. Gaara had arrived just in time, as Lee had collapsed from exhaustion. His pulsating red skin turned back to its normal cream and the chakra that drenched his body in a greenish aura flickered out of existence. Shizune immediately ran her hands over Lee and shook her head. "Naruto, go after Sasuke," Shizune said, eyes tense from concern. "I'm trusting you to find him while I tend to Lee and coordinate affairs with our allies." "Is that clear?" "Yes, ma'am. If he was going to confront Sasuke, he didn't want anyone to interfere." "Take care of everyone." "Good luck," Gaara said, and Naruto nearly stumbled. Not only was Gaara encouraging him, the malice that had exuded from his very being had all but disappeared. Still, he smiled at Gaara. "Thanks." Naruto dashed, racing until he stood atop Hashirama Senju's statue at the Valley of the End. Madara Uchiha's statue was on the other side of the waterfall, and standing on his head was his target, Sasuke. "Naruto," Sasuke said, "I knew you'd come." Dark, foul chakra coursed through his chakra network. He was barefoot, and his hands were loose at his sides. His forehead was clear of any headband. "What are you doing, Sasuke?" Naruto asked. A sallow smile crawled onto his face. "Why do you care? You realized that our old team was holding you back and you left." I don't blame you. In fact, I applaud your initiative. Naruto frowned. But I never left the hidden leaf. I found people inside it that could help me. And I've found people outside that'll give me the strength I need, Sasuke said. His smile showed all of his teeth, sticking to his face like glue. There is nothing left for me here. What about Sakura? Naruto asked. Sasuke's smile cracked. She'd only get in my way. Itachi has no mercy for the weak, and I have no use for friendship in my quest for revenge. Naruto fought down the queasiness Sasuke's callousness was causing. So you're going to leave the village, leave Sakura and Kakashi-sensei and everyone else behind just to kill your brother? I don't believe you. Sasuke closed his eyes, and his smile slithered into a cool frown. What has this village ever done for me? Nobody seems to care that an entire clan was massacred inside their own village. They brushed me off whenever I asked, like I was stupid. Sasuke's eyes shot open, and they blazed with a poisonous fury, mouth ripping apart from a vile scowl. Nobody cared about my pain, so why should I care about theirs? Naruto's first assumption was that Sasuke had finally lost it. The curse seal had messed up his mind, but the last time they spoke, he had found some kind of purpose in his few bonds, and it had been enough to mollify him. He wasn't surprised that Sasuke was holding back a lot of anger. In fact, he understood. No one cared about me either, Naruto said, frowning deeply. But I'd rather give them a reason to care than run away. I'll never leave the village behind. So what? You never had a family to lose. That was the biggest difference between them. He couldn't truly empathize with losing his clan, because that was something that happened before he was born. That didn't mean he couldn't try to help Sasuke before he made a mistake that would haunt him for the rest of his life. You can make a new family, Naruto said, finding a passion from deep within. The villagers care about you, Sasuke. You don't have to leave. Looking at those hypocrites makes me sick. They only cared that I was the last Uchiha, or that I was the rookie of the year, but I saw right through them. As if their kind words and their pity could help me when they didn't care enough to help me gain my vengeance. They let Itachi walk, and assumed I'd be satisfied as long as he was out of sight. But Kakashi-sensei taught you his Chidori, Naruto said. He helped you. It wasn't enough, Sasuke said. And Kakashi wasn't willing to help me kill Itachi. You know what the funny thing is? Because I wanted to avenge my clan, I was seen as a flight risk, and I was monitored by the village just in case I took one toe out of line. Naruto's eyes widened. What did you say? You mean you never knew? Sasuke broke into a fit of cold, mocking laughter. This is rich. The censor never sensed his watchers. What are you talking about? The old man had an Anbu squad monitor me, and I never would have known if Kakashi hadn't shown me how to detect chakra. But you're the Nine Tails container. If they were watching me, they were definitely watching you. It doesn't matter, Naruto said. They can watch me all they want, and they'll know I'm loyal. They'll know you're loyal, too, Sasuke. Naruto quickly noticed a chakra signature approaching them, sliding through Madara's statue like they was a carp climbing a waterfall. When they emerged, Naruto saw their purple outfit, gray shirt and round glasses. It was the musical note on his forehead protector that surprised him the most. Kabuto Yakushi pushed up his glasses. Guilty as charged. Naruto clenched his fists. You joined the sound. How could you betray the leaf? That brought a menacing smile to the traitor's face. You have to be loyal to something in order to betray it, and the hidden leaf never even tried to earn my trust. Naruto scanned Kabuto's chakra, and it wasn't suppressed like it had been in the exams. It was razor sharp, almost like a doctor's scalpel, and far larger than Sasuke's. Says the guy who's doing Orochimaru's bidding. Kabuto chuckled. Lord Orochimaru has always been forthcoming with me. But what about you, Naruto? Can you say that your Hokage hasn't lied to you? He's lied to Sasuke, and his Warhawk has lied to many. Naruto schooled his features into a composed mask. The third had lied, but Kabuto didn't need to know that. People have their secrets. Quite, but there's a difference between secrets and plain disrespect, Kabuto said. He flew through a set of hand seals. Well, it's been enlightening, Naruto, but as they say, duty calls. Kabuto unleashed an illusion that widened the gap between them, but Naruto smirked and broke through the genjutsu in an instant. You call that a genjutsu? Something bit his ankle. A snake, colored exactly like the statue he was standing on. I call that a distraction. His ankle froze and his vision blurred. Damn it, the snake's venom was really strong, and he'd been too focused on Sasuke to notice its presence. You'll be surprised at how a little trust can make you blind, Kabuto said, as Naruto fell forward, hitting the first Hokage's head face first. But that's just me. Kabuto became 2, then 4. Sasuke stared at him, and maybe it was the poison, but he almost swore he saw a look of regret on his face. Naruto was assaulted by the sterile aroma of bleach and clean linen sheets. He opened his eyes to see the familiar white of the hospital, but the light's blinding brightness forced his eyes shut. His arms and legs were pretty stiff, but he was alive. The light dimmed, and the curtains rustled shut. Naruto noticed the chakra of someone he hadn't seen in over 2 months, and opened his eyes once more. Long time no see, Naruto, Kakashi said, standing next to the window. Kakashi-sensei, Naruto asked, where were you? Taking A-rank missions back to back. Naruto winced. Yikes, I only finished up just after you went out on that mission yesterday. He'd been so caught up in the prospect of doing multiple back-breaking missions without a break and comparing them to his own experience, hearing that a whole day had passed brought his thoughts to a screeching halt. I was out for that long. Kakashi nodded, approaching the hospital bed. The poison was tailor-made to eat you from the inside out. Naruto gingerly grabbed his hair with his hand. He still ached everywhere. Orochimaru strikes again. That's what he does. Fortunately, Shizune stabilized you on sight, which gave your body and your tenant a fighting chance to recover. And here we are. The Nine Tails let out a gust of air within his mind, but watched in silence. So Shizune brought me back? Naruto asked. No, I did, Kakashi said. You were out cold and Sasuke was long gone. His scent was too far away for me to catch without leaving you behind. Naruto gave his once teacher a smile. Kakashi's eye crinkled. Then Naruto slammed his hand on his knee and bit back the shout of pain. Kabuto Yakushi was helping Sasuke. He betrayed the village. Kakashi sighed. I know. Back when the sound invaded us, Kabuto was the one who made everyone in the arena fall asleep. He's incredibly dangerous. So Kabuto had been working for Orochimaru since then, possibly for much longer. That facade of being a specialist in failure must have been his way of avoiding attention while gathering intel for the sound, and it worked, because having large amounts of chakra didn't mean a thing if you couldn't use it properly. Kabuto must have gotten a kick out of duping everyone. By the way, congratulations on your promotion, Kakashi said. Not only have you become a Chunin, you've mastered Genjutsu and learned the Rasengan. Naruto frowned. How do you know about all that? Kakashi's hands were in his pockets. Your master told me about it. I know that I haven't been the best sensei, but I'm proud of you, Naruto. He shook his head. You had your plan. I had mine. He didn't want to dig up the past and the pain those memories brought, and he hoped Kakashi got the hint. I never once doubted your potential, Kakashi said. You might have had a late start, but you had the heart and the drive to do great things. A scowl crossed his face. Then why didn't you help me when I asked you to teach me some jutsu? Teamwork is more important than any jutsu, Kakashi said, and Naruto was struck by the memory of their confrontation on the bridge. However, by the time you and your former teammates were able to work together, you'd given up on them, and you found other ways to improve yourself. You know why, Naruto said, looking at the wall, away from Kakashi's regretful eye. You found new friends and Team 7 became an afterthought. I wasn't surprised. I thought to myself, if I couldn't be the sensei you needed, I pledged to help you wherever I could. He nodded, stiffly. You did help me with my genjutsu problem. And you showed me how to find Master Jiraiya. He blinked. I still don't get why you couldn't have a shadow clone watch me. Lord Jiraiya insisted on teaching you. He encouraged me to focus on Sasuke. I did my best, and so did Sasuke, but I felt he wasn't ready to take on Gaara. Still, he got his chance to fight, and he repaid my fear by trying to impale you with my signature jutsu. The crackle of lightning, Sasuke's scream and the look of betrayal and pain on his face would never leave him. He still couldn't reconcile that Sasuke with the one who he saw at the valley. He stopped before he could hit me, Naruto said. Yes, He did. That made me believe he had a chance. Then he chose to abandon the leaf. I know he was struggling, but I never imagined he'd go rogue. He was building bonds and moving past revenge. Naruto frowned. He made his choice, Kakashi-sensei. He has to live with it. We all have to live with our choices, don't we? There was a moment of silence after that, as Naruto mulled over how it could have come to this point. If Naruto had persevered and pushed past whatever pain his old teammates had inflicted, then maybe he could have been closer to Sasuke. Even now, they had a bond, as fractured as it was. But he had Kurenai and Shikamaru. He didn't need to fight a losing battle. There wasn't a thing he could have changed. Orochimaru would still come after Sasuke regardless of their bond, and Sasuke would still feel trapped and desperate as long as Itachi was still alive. Maybe he'd finally had enough. I put too much on your shoulders, Naruto. You never let Sasuke and Sakura change who you were, and I was sure you could get through to them. But even you had your breaking point, and by the time I stepped in, you'd chosen a different path. I was disappointed that you gave up when you were so close to a breakthrough, but I don't blame you for losing heart. Naruto felt Kakashi touch his shoulder, and when he faced his former teacher, he saw a glut of emotions roiling in his eye. I'm sorry that you had to endure that pain alone. And I'm sorry that I couldn't have been the sensei you needed. Naruto held back a thick breath. It would have been so easy to cut Kakashi down to ribbons, but he couldn't do that. Kakashi had always been real with him. Don't worry about it. You're not my sensei anymore, but that doesn't mean you can't be my friend. Kakashi nodded, squeezing his shoulder. Thank you, Naruto. Even though Kakashi had been so insistent on his plan, he'd still taken the time to help him after his falling out with Team 7. He'd understood his pain and supported him without question. He truly cared. There's just one thing that's bothering me, Naruto said. Sasuke said you taught him chakra detection and the Chidori because he was a flight risk. Is that really true? Kakashi let go of his shoulder. After he was assigned to my team, Lord Third told me to look after Sasuke, foster his loyalty to the Hidden Leaf. I was given permission to do so any way I saw fit. I showed Sasuke how to detect chakra, but I offered to teach Sakura as well to show him that I was teaching him on my terms and not his. I taught Sasuke the Chidori in order to give him a tool to protect his comrades, and I did my best to show him a life that didn't revolve around revenge so he wouldn't be tempted to use the power Orochimaru infected him with. He sighed. Yet, here we are. Naruto swallowed. If you were watching Sasuke, then who was watching me? Sasuke said he had an Anbu squad watching him, but I never sensed one. Kakashi clenched his fist, then put it back in his pocket. His chakra pulsed, once. No one was listening. Kakashi stared at Naruto with a hard eye. When you were younger, Lord Third assigned an Anbu detail to look after you. I was part of it. When I left Anbu, another ninja replaced me and they continued to watch you until you became a genin. Naruto's eyes widened in realization. No wonder Kakashi had felt so familiar. As far as I know, they stopped when I became your sensei. However, it's possible that Lord Third could have assigned another protection detail without my knowledge. I don't know if he's done so or not, since I don't have access to that information. Lord Jiraiya is your master now. While it made sense that ninja would be assigned to monitor the Jinchuriki's movements discreetly, Kabuto's reminder of the Third's lies caused bile to sink into his stomach. If it had been the first time he'd been confronted with the idea, he'd dismiss it as a liar being a liar, but it had only brought those doubts back to the forefront of his mind. Are you sure about this? Naruto asked. I could be thrown into prison for revealing this to you, but you deserve to know. And I trust that you'll keep this to yourself. I'm good at keeping secrets. He rubbed his stomach. That you are, Kakashi said. He rustled Naruto's hair with a gentle hand. I'll let you rest. Lady Tsunade gave me the chance to talk to you as long as I told her when you woke up. I might as well hold up my end of the bargain. Kakashi moved to the door, and looked over his shoulder. Oh, and happy birthday, Naruto. Kakashi left his room and Naruto settled into his bed with a smile on his face. A few minutes later, he felt a very familiar presence around the window. Come on in, pervy sage. Jiraiya climbed through the window, as was his custom, and let more blinding light in. By this point, though, he was able to adjust. You're definitely loyal to the Hidden Leaf, Naruto, Jiraiya said. You've come this far without succumbing to hatred, and the bonds you've made are proof of that. I'm not sure who Sarutobi-sensei has assigned to watch over you, but I know Tsunade hasn't assigned anyone. And I don't think that any Anbu could get around that censor of yours. But Jiraiya could. It was just motivation to get so good at sensing that no one could ever hide from him. Can you tell her to get rid of my watcher? Naruto asked. You want her to ask how you found out? Naruto shook his head. I've got people watching me too. It gives the Hokage a fast way of contacting me. Don't let it bother you. Easy for Jiraiya to say. He wasn't shunned by the village for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. If he was normal, he wouldn't have needed watching at all, but here he was, being grouchy over something he couldn't control. Fine, Naruto grumbled, because there was no point arguing about this. Jiraiya chuckled. Have you given our trip any thought? His master had an easygoing smile on his face. He really did want to spend more time with Jiraiya, and it wasn't just because he'd get some extreme training. But 3 years was 3 years. It's so long, sensei, Naruto said. I'd miss all my friends. Jiraiya crossed his arms. It is pretty daunting, but I wouldn't recommend that you come with me unless I was certain you'd improve. You shouldn't worry about your friends, though. You'll come back to them with a wealth of experience and memories, and they'll have grown too. That did sound really nice, and it soothed the fear of longing and distance. He knew he had people to come back to, but they'd be different. He was certain he would change as well. He'd be 16 when he came back. I'll be in the village for a couple of days, so if you've made your choice or you just want to talk, you know where to find me. The door opened, revealing Tsunade with a frown on her face. Planning to terrorize more unsuspecting women, Jiraiya. I'll go hit a bar instead if you come with me, Jiraiya said without missing a beat. Tsunade smirked. I'll pass. I have too much work on my plate to get drunk with you. Jiraiya gave Naruto a wink before slipping out the window. Tsunade had joined him at his bed, holding a clipboard to her chest. Hey, Grandma, Naruto said. Tsunade smiled, surprisingly enough. Grandma, what happened to plain old Tsunade? I can't call the Hokage by her name, can I? Naruto asked. And I called your sensei, old man, before. Well, I'll let you get away with it, if only because you're already in a hospital bed. Naruto gulped. The smile on her face was sweet, like poison. Yes, ma'am. You catch on quick, Tsunade said. She took a look at her clipboard. How are you feeling? Okay, I guess. The stiffness in his muscles had started to fade, but he hadn't tried to move around. Tsunade placed a glowing palm on his forehead, and Naruto felt her chakra swim through his own chakra network, filling up every nook and cranny. Once it had reached his toes, the chakra mixed with his own. Good news, the poisons left your system, Tsunade said. I'll let you leave, but I suggest you get some more rest before doing anything strenuous. It'll do you some good to relax. Naruto smiled, considering his next move. Thanks, Grandma Hokage. Tsunade closed her eyes and let out a frustrated breath. I wouldn't be surprised if the poison went into your brain. Then again, she smirked, opening her eyes. I doubt it'd make any difference. Naruto's smile grew wider. But you said the poison's gone, right? The damage might already be done. After all, you can't cure stupid. Naruto just laughed. After taking Jiraiya's advice to heart, he could take Tsunade's jabs and barbs without getting angry. They still stung, but if she could dish it out, she could sure as hell take it. You did a good job yesterday, Tsunade said, all business. The reminder of the mission brought a frown to his face. I didn't bring Sasuke back. You still managed to save your comrades and eliminate the Sound Ninja, and you did it on short notice. She gave him a genuine smile. Hold your head up high, Naruto. You completed your mission. It wasn't just me. Shizune really helped me out. That's what I trained her to do, Tsunade said. She could have had a clone accompany you when you went to challenge Sasuke. She put herself at risk in a fight when she was the team's medic. However, her eyes gleamed. She was excellent. A bit more experience will do her a world of good. The pride in Tsunade's voice when she spoke about Shizune didn't remind him of his own relationship with Jiraiya, it reminded him of Kurenai. Tsunade tapped his head with her clipboard. Get some rest, alright. You might end up being nearly as tall as me if you do. Naruto held back his retort. Ever since she returned to the village, Tsunade's rougher edges had softened. She almost seemed like a grandma instead of a bitter old crab. Speaking to his former teacher, his current master and the Hokage herself had really helped him ignore what Sasuke and Kabuto had told him. It also kept his sadness at bay. However, it was time for him to return to reality. He got out of bed and took a shaky step, then another, and managed to walk to his clothes with little difficulty. Putting them on was a bit of a drag, but other than some aches and pains, he was as right as rain. Naruto departed from his room and saw Sakura sitting on a nearby bench. She was hunched over, hands clutching her red dress. She straightened her back and stood up, and just as he was about to pass her, she looked him straight in the eye. "Naruto," Sakura said. Her green eyes were rimmed with red, but she glowered with fury and contempt. It was an uncomfortable reminder of her temper. "You found Sasuke, right?" "Yeah, I did. He got away." She shivered, but composed herself quickly. "I heard you were caught off guard, but I don't blame you." Naruto flinched. "You don't. It won't bring that bastard back." He never thought Sakura would ever say anything bad about Sasuke, let alone call him a bastard. Even when she hit him back in the Forest of Death, it was only to calm him down. "Did something happen between you two?" Her glare darkened. "Yeah, it did." She didn't elaborate, but it was her business, not his. Sakura wiped at her eyes, and when she dropped her hand, her eyes had hardened into something very familiar. It was resolve. The kind that came after someone hit their breaking point and decided that enough was enough. "I'm going to bring him back," Sakura said. "And that's a promise." He'd seen what she was capable of when pushed to the brink, and since there wasn't any bad blood between them anymore, he found himself rooting for her. "Good luck," Naruto said. "Thanks. I'll need it." Sakura gave him a small, parting smile, then walked away, fists clenched at her side. Naruto let out a breath and made his way towards the entrance. He thought she'd blame everyone who failed to bring her precious teammate back, but she wasn't. It seemed like all her anger was reserved for Sasuke. He passed by Choji's room and saw him sleeping peacefully with his sensor. Shikamaru was sitting just outside the room, his finger covered in bandages. His eyes were focused on it. Naruto sat next to him on the bench and waited until his gaze broke. "How are you doing?" Naruto asked. Shikamaru frowned. "Naruto. Who else?" His attempt at lightening the mood only made Shikamaru frown even harder. "I'm not ready to lead a team." "What are you talking about? You're smarter than almost anyone else I know, and you always manage to pull off some really crazy plans." Shikamaru scoffed. "Doesn't matter how smart I am if the enemy's too strong. I got off with a broken finger, but compared to everyone else, that's nothing. Hinata's stable, but it'll take weeks for Shino to fully recover. Kiba and Akamaru are too banged up to go anywhere. Lee's in emergency care from overusing the gates and nearly destroying his hand, and Choji's just been stabilized. Hell, you got poisoned, too." Naruto paled when he saw the bags lining Shikamaru's eyes, making him look way older than 13. "If we didn't get reinforcements when we did, and if you and Shizune didn't rescue everyone, we'd all be dead. I should have done more." This wasn't how he wanted to see his friend. Shikamaru was the same person who encouraged him and helped him in his time of need. If he was hurting, it was his duty to return the favor. "What was your mission?" Naruto asked. Shikamaru exhaled through his nose. "Go after Sasuke and eliminate the sound ninja accompanying him." "Exactly. We didn't get Sasuke, but all the sound ninja are dead and everyone's alive because you were the leader. You managed to separate the enemy and gave your teammates a fighting chance, and that made it easy for us to finish the job. Anyone else in your position wouldn't be willing to take those risks." Shikamaru closed his eyes. "I wouldn't have had to isolate the enemy if I was stronger. And I wouldn't have needed reinforcements if my plan was better." Naruto scowled. "Well, tough luck. You know what's at stake when you go into the field, so stop your whining. If you aren't strong enough, then get stronger. You wanna let someone else screw up a job you could do in your sleep? No. Then there's your answer." He didn't realize he was standing until he saw the shock pull Shikamaru's eyes wide open. His chest was heaving from his rant. "If being a better leader means having to train until I drop, then I can do it. It sure beats being a coward. That's the spirit. Shikamaru laughed. It was so contagious. Naruto joined in. He'd helped Shikamaru find the inspiration he needed. It filled his heart with joy. It's funny, Shikamaru said. My dad chewed me out earlier for being too afraid to lead when lives are on the line, and now you're pushing me to get stronger. He smiled, and it easily conveyed his gratitude and resolve. Thanks, Naruto. Naruto returned Shikamaru's smile with one that was even brighter, clapping him on the back. That's what friends are for. Together, they left the hospital. Shikamaru faced him, fist raised. Let us know if you ever decide to go on that trip, okay? You got it, buddy. After they bumped fists, they went their separate ways. Once Naruto reached his apartment, he breathed in deep and let it out. He scanned his home with his sensor, searching for any chakra signature trying to hide from him. He found nothing, just as he expected. His minder was either a master at concealment, or there was no minder, and he was just paranoid. The nine-tailed fox's laughter filled his mind, and a frown split his face. What do you want? What you call paranoia might be the first sensible thought you have ever had. Naruto definitely noticed the backhanded compliment, but it seemed like the Nine-Tails wasn't just being mean for no reason. If Kakashi-sensei and Master Jiraiya don't know who's watching me, why should I care? You must be curious about the secrets the old man is keeping from you. I am, but he isn't going to tell me. What do you want me to do about it? He felt the Nine-Tails' giant red eyes bore into him with all its malice and disdain. Nothing, if you are content to live in your cage. He would have been fine if an invisible Anbu detail was all he had to worry about. He was the Nine-Tails container, after all. However, it couldn't be as simple as that, because Kakashi had to reveal this to him at great personal risk, and Sasuke hadn't been told about his watchers at all. When he was younger, he hadn't been told why everyone despised him. Mizuki told him why. When he was a genin, he hadn't been told about his clan. While that was because of his own complacency, Shikamaru gave him the book that revealed his clan's history, and Karen was proof his clan still lived. He was a Chunin, and he'd put his life on the line for the village, yet the third still hadn't told him about his parents. Hiruzen Sarutobi hadn't told him a thing, because he wasn't ready to know or he was too young. When Naruto kept his own secrets, he was expected to tell the former Hokage everything. Was this the difference between secrets and plain disrespect? The thought didn't sit well with him, but it had sprouted and taken root. There's only one place I can get this information, and if I get caught, they'll throw me in jail. What then? Do not allow them to capture you, the Nine-Tails told him, like it was that simple. Maybe it was. He got caught the first time he broke into the Hokage's office, but he was far more skilled than he was back then. Then again, why would he ever do the Nine-Tails' bidding? His answer was more malicious laughter. I have no desire to aid you if you choose to be their little weapon and refuse to take what is rightfully yours. Naruto let the Nine-Tails' anger wash over him. You stopped me from using your power before when I needed it, so I don't care if I can't use it again. The Nine-Tails smiled, saliva dribbling down rows of massive fangs. You are not entitled to my power, Naruto. I am only bound to you because men and women who believed themselves to be good stole my freedom and let their fear of my might fuel their delusion. This village is filled to the brim with such hypocrisy, and they will lie to your face while pretending to have your best interests at heart. Yet you will remain loyal to the deceitful and shun me because I spoke the truth. In that light, it was kind of unfair, but he didn't owe the Nine-Tailed Fox a damn thing. Although, the Nine-Tails didn't owe him anything, either, and that gave what he chose to share a considerable amount of weight. He didn't know what the Nine-Tails hoped to gain, other than freedom from its cage, but when he considered its words, he realized they made a lot of sense. But what if the Nine-Tails was wrong? The Nine-Tails huffed. You may value what little privacy you have, but it will never be enough. It should have been, but it stuck with Naruto long after the fox retreated into its cage. When it came down to it, it wasn't about the Nine-Tails, or Sasuke, or Kabuto or anyone else. It was about him. It always had been. He could let the third keep his secrets and remain trusted among the village's elite. He could go to the Hokage's office and find the truth on his own, but if he failed, his career and reputation would be ruined. Would he take a risk and seek the truth, or leave things be and live in blissful ignorance. What was he going to choose? He agonized over the decision until night had fallen and his legs ached from their pacing. But it had paid off, and he knew what he had to do. I'm ready. Time to take what's mine. The Hokage administration complex was in full view from Naruto's perch. The desire to learn about his parents, to learn everything the third and the rest of the village had kept from him was too strong to ignore. He couldn't leave well enough alone, could he? A curt smile adorned his face as he felt the familiar weight of his signature orange tracksuit. It was a reminder of who he'd been before he met Kurenai, and he'd need that Naruto's resolve and tenacity to see this thing through. Besides, he was skilled enough that he could walk in wearing bright neon lights and complete his mission. With a determined nod, he slipped into the alley closest to the complex, using the wall that surrounded it as cover. There was a ninja lurking nearby, and Naruto waited for him to leave before he leapt over the wall. He landed without a sound, sprinting towards the back entrance of the complex and closing the door behind him as gently as he could. He was in. Step 1, complete. Naruto made his way down the halls of the complex's administrative branch. If the Hokage wasn't around, then only a few guards were stationed within the complex to act as security. It was easy to find the records department and reach it, bypassing the guards without alerting them. He halted in front of the department's entrance, hand hovering over the door handle. There was no going back once he opened the door. There was no turning back, either. Naruto breathed out and opened the door. There weren't any traps he could detect, not even the glow of an activated seal. A bit anticlimactic, but it worked in his favor. Naruto pulled the door shut and searched rows and rows of cabinets for his file. He found it and took out a scroll with his name on it. Once again, there were no seals, but two men entered the room. With a soft hiss, Naruto pressed against the cabinet and used genjutsu to camouflage himself from sight, smell, touch and hearing. The guards searched the room with roving eyes, moving with silent footfalls. He stilled his breathing as they approached until he was as still as a statue. They ignored the other rows, coming to the cabinet that held his file like they were attracted to it. One of them examined the cabinet while the other watched his fellow guards back. Nothing's been taken. Must have been a faulty alarm. Maybe the alarm was mechanical. It'd be a good way to misdirect any sensors. No point whining about it now. Let me check, the other guard said. They switched positions. Naruto thought fast and made two hand seals before the guard could reach for a scroll that wasn't there. A loud crash reverberated across the room. Did you hear that? The guard said, as his hand moved to his kunai holster. Yeah, they left to find a sound that had no source. No physical source, anyway. Breathing another sigh of relief, Naruto quickly but quietly unwrapped the scroll. He'd have to read what he could before they returned. Easier said than done. Other than his basic personal info, everything documented about him was listed chronologically, so it'd take time he couldn't waste to find what he was looking for. He saw his graduation report, after-action reports for his missions, even his psychological profile. Then his eyes went wide. The guards were still away. There was definitely a protection detail assigned to him, but there were numerous red stamps that redacted everything else. Even his sensor couldn't break past the seals encasing this part of the scroll, and all he saw were the words, Hokage's eyes only. Damn it, he was so close, but so far. He only had confirmation of things he already knew, but the truth he craved was just beyond his fingertips. Maybe it was time to go home, call it a day. Do not let fear defeat you, the Nine-Tails said. His desperation turned to determination. I'll check the Hokage's office. If I can't find anything, will you be satisfied? For now, yes. Naruto rolled the scroll up and placed it inside the cabinet, closing it. He dispelled the genjutsu and waited for the guards to enter the room before leaving the records department behind. The path to the Hokage's office was as clear in his mind as the daytime sky, and he called upon all his experience as a prankster to sneak past any patrolling ninja. He entered the room with practiced ease, not bothering to hesitate now that he was fully committed. The moonlight came in through the glass windows, bathing the Hokage's desk in an ethereal glow. It was surreal and eerie being in the room alone, in the dark. He suddenly realized he'd broken the law many times over, realized that he was going against everything he'd been taught. His resolve hardened. Once he got what he came for, then he'd leave. Naruto crept behind the desk, closing his eyes and using his sensor as his guide. There were 6 drawers on the desk, 3 on each side of the chair. 5 were sealed shut, so he opened the last one and saw a sake bottle with 2 saucers. Typical Tsunade. Naruto shook his head, and noticed an indent at the back of the drawer, only visible thanks to his position in the moonlight. He carefully removed the bottle and saucers before feeling for the groove the indent exposed. It took a bit of time, but he heard a slight pop as the wooden panel was released, revealing a number of scrolls hidden beneath. Naruto swallowed. The 2 guards in the records room had left and seemed to be heading out of the complex, and no other guards were nearby. He reached forward hesitantly, grasping one of the scrolls. It read, S-rank mission assignments. Naruto set it back inside. There were other scrolls, but nothing that was worth looking at with the time limit he was under. He reached for the last scroll and bared his teeth when he saw his name emblazoned on it. He flung it open and was bombarded with more of those cursed red words. Hokage's eyes only was quickly becoming his least favorite phrase, and Naruto held back the tears of frustration that threatened to leak from his eyes. It seemed like it could only be passed down verbally, which made some sense. It was extremely valuable and possibly game-changing information he was trying to learn, but it didn't make his life any easier. Why were his parents' identities so important that they had to remain secret? The Nine-Tails' laughter didn't help matters, but it could laugh until the cows came home. He'd get that answer from someone, and once he became a Jonin, no one could deny him anything. Regardless, he moved on, getting to the information he'd came for. He read the file and his hands grew sweaty from the implication. Mission. Observation Protection. Subject. Uzumaki, Naruto. Reason for mission. Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox. Method of mission. Anbu Protection Squad. Duration of mission. Until graduation from Ninja Academy, to be taken over by sensei or other means as designated by presiding Hokage. Ninja on assignment. Shark, ocelot, vulture, tilapia. There was a note stating that tilapia had replaced an Anbu using the code name, wolf. Mission accomplished. There was a red stamp saying it had been accomplished and that each of the Anbu team had been paid for an A-rank mission every month. He blinked as he read the next section. Mission. Observation Loyalty. Subject. Uzumaki, Naruto. Reason for mission. Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox. Flight risk. Method of mission. Observe target's mental state. Ensure that target remains loyal to village. Duration of mission. Undetermined. Ninja on assignment. Kurenai Yuhi. Mission accomplished. Ongoing. The scroll hit the floor with a clatter. Naruto looked at his hands, bile swarming his throat and burning it raw. His heart thundered against his chest and his jaw quivered. He couldn't. It wasn't. It had to be a no, no, no. Naruto grabbed the scroll and read it again, the word, loyalty, taunting him. Those intense feelings, that thing he would have called love turned black, like a rotting carcass. He could barely breathe. Their last date, their first ever meeting, every single interaction they ever had clashed within his mind. It was Kurenai's rejection that burst through, and it was so much harsher and more profound now that he knew the truth. That woman truly is a master of illusions to have crafted such an elaborate ruse, the Nine-Tailed Fox said. How fitting that she was chosen to bind you to your cage. Those tears of frustration he'd battled to hold had become tears of sorrow, of agony, of betrayal, of unbridled rage, and he wept freely. But no tears would fall. He thought he knew Kurenai. He really thought she was the one, but it was all an illusion, a lie that she had created as she twisted him so that she became the center of his universe. He rolled up the scroll and put it back with the others. He moved the panel over the scrolls and smoothed out the edges. He placed the sake bottles and its saucers on top. He closed the drawer, and stood. When he was a child, he'd wanted nothing more than to sit behind this desk as Hokage, but that was when he had no idea what being Hokage truly meant. Now, Naruto's face was a cold, detached mask, like it had been when he had enough of his team. Clarity had overcome everything else, for he was blind no more. Now you understand, the Nine-Tails said. Mercifully, it gave him his space. The love of his life had cajoled him to keep him tied to the hidden leaf, and the man he'd thought of as a grandfather had been the one who told her to do it. Well, Hiruzen Sarutobi was no grandfather of his anymore. He'd never trust the old bastard ever again. And Kurenai, it was time to pay her a visit. He had to leave, and he would do so with everything he'd learned as a ninja. When he was on the mission, sentiment would only hold him back from completing his objective. And when he had one goal to obtain, it was only a matter of time before he achieved it. He flew through the corridors of the complex like he was a ghost, and all possible avenues of detection could not reach him. Naruto stepped out to meet the moon and disappeared from view, splitting into four. One would go home to pack any belongings he'd need. Another would go to the Nara household and wait to tell them of his plan. The next would find Jiraiya. And he would confront Kurenai. The problem was, she wasn't at her apartment, the waterfall, or anywhere. What a cruel twist of fate that she was able to escape him. What an awful joke, knowing that she did this to him and he couldn't ask her why. Everything about her felt so genuine, but it only made her betrayal that much worse. There was no point waiting for her to come back and lie to him again. He could sort through these tangled feelings when he was far, far away from this place. It was fitting that his next destination was the fourth Hokage's head, as Minato Namikaze had been the one to set everything in motion when he'd sealed the 9 tails inside of him. Did he really believe he was capable of handling this burden, the hatred and deceit and despair that came with it? How could he be so sure that a mere baby with a scattered clan could do something so difficult? It had caused him so much pain, so much trouble, but there was no point in resenting the fourth. He was doomed to fight in the Shinigami's stomach forever. He opened his eyes. Jiraiya had arrived. He had one test for his master. He needed to know if he was worthy of his trust. He wanted to give Jiraiya one last chance, because he was done with giving people his heart and having it crushed. "What's wrong?" Jiraiya asked. The concern in his voice seemed to be real, but faking emotions to that degree must have been easy for a master spy. "Do you know who my parents are?" Naruto focused his entire being on the seasoned shinobi, trying to determine if he'd tell the truth or say a sweet lie. A tense silence formed between them, the wind whipping at their clothes and feet. "I do," Jiraiya said. "I've known your parents for a long time, and I never agreed with keeping their identities a secret from you." Naruto could sense that he was telling the truth, and he relaxed, but just by a touch. "Why do you ask?" The question he longed to have an answer for came fully formed at his lips, but he stopped himself before he could ask it. "Sarutobi always said he'd tell me when I was older, but he couldn't be the only one who knew who they were." Naruto paused, searching for the right way to express himself. "I know that it's a big secret, but do you think I'm ready to learn their names?" Jiraiya scrutinized him, taking in his cold eyes and listless frown. "I think that secret would be safe with you, but you'd have to be stronger before you'd be ready to accept the responsibility that comes with this knowledge." "How long?" "About 3 years, Jiraiya said, and that's only if you come with me." The truth was surprisingly refreshing. Naruto exhaled, and some of the tension in his body dissolved. He had a goal to work towards, and he was sure that Jiraiya would tell him the truth when the time came. "Thank you for being honest with me, sensei. Let's leave." Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Right now. He'd miss his friends, that much was still true, but he couldn't stay in the same village as Sarutobi or Kurenai when the pang of betrayal was still so fresh. His master let out a slow nod. "Tell me when you've gathered your things." Naruto's clone joined them on the monument, holding a set of scrolls with everything he'd need. He put them in his jacket and let the clone dispel. He decided to form another clone, and had it run to Ichiraku Ramen. "I'm ready," Naruto said. Jiraiya frowned. "I'll send Tsunade a messenger toad as soon as we leave the country." He made eye contact with Naruto. "I don't know what changed your mind, but whenever you want to talk, I'll listen, and whatever you tell me will be our secret." Naruto rubbed his eye and let out a shaky breath. "Thank you, sensei." He looked at the village's many lights, the buildings and trees that made up his home. In spite of everything, he'd miss it, because it had been his home and he knew nothing else. And he had no intention of leaving it behind. He wouldn't let Sarutobi win. Jiraiya disappeared in a swirl of leaves, and with a heavy heart, Naruto followed his master. Together, they left the village hidden in the leaves, and he wouldn't be seen until he was ready to return. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.